The Logistics Committee, responsible for arranging the review sessions. They also organize the learning materials made by the student volunteers and assures its credibility. The Transcription Committee, within their scope of responsibilities, are preparing the transcription of lectures that would be provided to the students, as well as designing mock exams to assess their understanding. And lastly, the Tutorial Committee. They provide the group and small group sessions, extending their knowledge and understanding on courses they have chosen. Now that you know our committees, we hope to see you become part of our team. With your power and our team, no student will be left behind.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to the College of Medical Technology, to our beloved faculty and
with diligence and hard work, we will ascend into greater heights.
So let us take this opportunity to cherish and support the contestants in their endeavors for tonight's event.
But vaccine is our best weapon in this battle.
Mahal kong Pilipinas, halina't magpabakuna, panlaban sa sakuna.
Let's do our part as Filipino citizens so we can finally feel as one.
We serve as vessels for our community to move on even further and farther.
To meet Maria Trinity R. Napoles. Mr. Paul Jonathan Status Orange. Anna Marie D. Alcantara Orange. And now, for the total percentage, for runway walk, 10%.
Ikaw pa rin, walang iba ang gusto kong makasama.
Nangangamba ang iyong puso, hindi ka sigurado.
Tell you that I learned from College of Medtech in Trinity University of Asia is the interview. And we need to value every activity, every experience we take on, and studying in order to help in the community in the future. And I would tell everything about them, what I'm doing for the day, and I would ask them how they are and that I love them.
And in order for us to achieve a safer environment, we must be able to mandate vaccines. Because for me,
This is Ben. Ben, a medical technology student from Trinity University of Asia, is currently studying for his major exams. But due to the current online setup, efficiently learning concepts has been a major challenge for him. From problems like slow internet connection to lack of motivation, Ben has experienced it all. Ben knows that if he wants to academically excel this school year, he's going to need a lot of help. This is where Project Hope comes in. Project Hope is a project under the FISMIT's TUA chapter, which aims to help ease the struggles of fellow students during these trying times. It offers services such as one-on-one and group review sessions that are designed to further reinforce essential academic concepts. During each session, a student will be paired with a tutor who will help them in the subject they're having difficulties with. This can range from a simple question and answer session to a complete review of the subject or topic. When he heard of Project Hope, Ben went ahead and set up an appointment for a review session. He utilized this well, asking questions after questions on topics he didn't understand. With this, his grades greatly improved to the point that he even became the top of the class. Project Hope ensures that even during these difficult times, no student will be left behind. To book an appointment, go and see the pinned post on Project Hope's Facebook page. Welcome, future medical technologists. I am Miss Minutes of Project Hope, and it's my job to invite you to become a student volunteer, a bearer of hope. But before that, settle in as I introduce the different committees under Project Hope. The Creatives and Promotions Committee. They are in charge of the publication materials and visual tools utilized by the organization, as well as its captions. The Student Affairs Committee, acting as a help desk and assuring the organization fulfills its purpose. They compile suggestions, comments, as well as grievances from the students. The Logistics Committee, responsible for arranging the review sessions. They also organize the learning materials made by the student volunteers and assures its credibility. The Transcription Committee. Within their scope of responsibilities are preparing the transcription of lectures that would be provided to the students, as well as designing mock exams to assess their understanding. And lastly, the Tutorial Committee. They provide the group and small group sessions, extending their knowledge and understanding on courses they have chosen. Now that you know our committees, we hope to see you become part of our team. With your power and our team, no student will be left behind.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to the College of Medical Technology, to our beloved faculty
With diligence and hard work, we will ascend into greater heights.
So let us take this opportunity to cherish and support the contestants in their endeavors for tonight's event.
But vaccine is our best weapon in this battle.
Mahal kong Pilipinas, halina't magpabakuna, panlaban sa sakuna.
Let's do our part as Filipino citizens so we can finally feel as one.
We serve as vessels for our community to move on even further and farther.
To Miss Maria Trinity R. Napoles. Mr. Paul Jonathan Status Orange. Anna Marie D. Alcantara Orange. And now, for the total percentage, for runway walk, 10%,
pa rin, walang iba. Ang gusto kong makasama.
Nangangamba, nangangamba ang iyong puso, hindi ka sigurado.
You that I learned from College Amete in Trinity University of Asia is the interview. And we need to value every activity, every experience we take on, and studying in order to help in the community in the future.
And I would tell everything about them, what I'm doing for the day, and I would ask them how they are and that I love them.
And in order for us to achieve a safer environment, we must be able to mandate vaccines. Because for me,
Welcome, future medical technologists. I am Miss Minutes of Project Hope, and it's my job to invite you to become a student volunteer, a bearer of hope. But before that, settle in as I introduce the different committees under Project Hope. The Creatives and Promotions Committee. They are in charge of the publication materials and visual tools utilized by the organization, as well as its captions. The Student Affairs Committee, acting as a help desk and assuring the organization fulfills its purpose. They compile suggestions, comments, as well as grievances from the students. The Logistics Committee, responsible for arranging the review sessions. They also organize the learning materials made by the student volunteers and assures its credibility. The Transcription Committee, within their scope of responsibilities, are preparing the transcription of lectures that would be provided to the students, as well as designing mock exams to assess their understanding. And lastly, the Tutorial Committee. They provide the group and small group sessions, extending their knowledge and understanding on courses they have chosen. Now that you know our committees, we hope to see you become part of our team. With your power and our team, no student will be left behind. Welcome.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to the College of Medical Technology, to our beloved faculty and
With diligence and hard work, we will ascend into greater heights.
So let us take this opportunity to cherish and support the contestants in their endeavors for tonight's event.
But vaccine is our best weapon in this battle.
Mahal kong Pilipinas, halina't magpabakuna, panlaban sa sakuna.
Let's do our part as Filipino citizens so we can finally feel as one.
We serve as vessels for our community to move on even further and farther.
To Miss Maria Trinity R. Napoles. Mr. Paul Jonathan Status Orenstein. Anna Marie D. Alcantara Orenstein. And now, for the total percentage for runway walk, 10%.
Ikaw pa rin, walang iba. Ang gusto kong makasama.
Nangangamba, nangangamba ang iyong puso, hindi ka sigurado.
Tell you that I learned from College Ametic in Trinity University of Asia is the interview. And we need to value every activity, every experience we take on, and studying in order to help in the community in the future.
And I will tell everything about them, what I'm doing for the day, and I would ask them how they are and that I love them.
And in order for us to achieve a safer environment, we must be able to mandate vaccines. Because for me,
This is Ben. Ben, a medical technology student from Trinity University of Asia, is currently studying for his major exams. But due to the current online setup, efficiently learning concepts has been a major challenge for him. From problems like slow internet connection to lack of motivation, Ben has experienced it all. Ben knows that if he wants to academically excel this school year, he's going to need a lot of help. This is where Project Hope comes in. Project Hope is a project under the FISMIT's TUA chapter, which aims to help ease the struggles of fellow students during these trying times. It offers services such as one-on-one and group review sessions that are designed to further reinforce essential academic concepts. During each session, a student will be paired with a tutor who will help them in the subject they're having difficulties with. This can range from a simple question and answer session to a complete review of the subject or topic. When he heard of Project Hope, Ben went ahead and set up an appointment for a review session. He utilized this well, asking questions after questions on topics he didn't understand. With this, his grades greatly improved to the point that he even became the top of the class. Project Hope ensures that even during these difficult times, no student will be left behind. To book an appointment, go and see the pinned post on Project Hope's Facebook page. Welcome, future medical technologists. I am Miss Minutes of Project Hope, and it's my job to invite you to become a student volunteer, a bearer of hope. But before that, settle in as I introduce the different committees under Project Hope. The Creatives and Promotions Committee. They are in charge of the publication materials and visual tools utilized by the organization, as well as its captions. The Student Affairs Committee, acting as a help desk and assuring the organization fulfills its purpose. They compile suggestions, comments, as well as grievances from the students. The Logistics Committee, responsible for arranging the review sessions. They also organize the learning materials made by the student volunteers and assures its credibility. The Transcription Committee. within their scope of responsibilities are preparing the transcription of lectures that would be provided to the students, as well as designing mock exams to assess their understanding. And lastly, the tutorial committee. They provide the group and small group sessions, extending their knowledge and understanding on courses they have chosen. Now that you know our committees, we hope to see you become part of our team. With your power and our team, no student will be left behind.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to the College of Medical Technology, to our beloved faculty and
With diligence and hard work, we will ascend into greater heights.
So let us take this opportunity to cherish and support the contestants in their endeavors for tonight's event.
But vaccine is our best weapon in this battle.
Mahal kong Pilipinas, halina't magpabakuna, panlaban sa sakuna.
Let's do our part as Filipino citizens so we can finally feel as one.
We serve as vessels for our community to move on even further and farther.
To Miss Maria Trinity R. Napoles. Mr. Paul Jonathan Faces Orange. Anna Marie D. Alcantara Orange. And now, for the total percentage, for runway walk, 10%.
Ikaw pa rin, walang iba. Ang gusto kong makasama.
Nangangamba, nangangamba ang iyong puso, hindi ka sigurado.
Tell you that I learned from College of Medtech in Trinity University of Asia is the interview. And we need to value every activity, every experience we take on, and studying in order to help in the community in the future.
And I would tell everything about them, what I'm doing for the day, and I would ask them how they are and that I love them.
And in order for us to achieve a safer environment, we must be able to mandate vaccines. Because for me,
This is Ben. Ben, a medical technology student from Trinity University of Asia, is currently studying for his major exams. But due to the current online setup, efficiently learning concepts has been a major challenge for him. From problems like slow internet connection to lack of motivation, Ben has experienced it all. Ben knows that if he wants to academically excel this school year, he's going to need a lot of help. This is where Project Hope comes in. Project Hope is a project under the FISMIT's TUA chapter, which aims to help ease the struggles of fellow students during these trying times. It It offers services such as one-on-one and group review sessions that are designed to further reinforce essential academic concepts. During each session, a student will be paired with a tutor who will help them in the subject they're having difficulties with. This can range from a simple question and answer session to a complete review of the subject or topic. When he heard of Project Hope, Ben went ahead and set up an appointment for a review session. He utilized this well, asking questions after questions on topics he didn't understand. With this, his grades greatly improved to the point that he even became the top of the class. Project Hope ensures that even during these difficult times, no student will be left behind. To book an appointment, go and see the pinned post on Project Hope's Facebook page. Welcome, future
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Our session is about to begin. Before we get started, we'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event, specifically those interested in getting CPD units. First, CPD units will only be given to those with complete attendance or time in and evaluation, which includes some post-event questions and time out. Include the name as stated in your PRC license to avoid discrepancies in the PRC system. Use your most active email address for the electronic certificate. Time in attendance link will only be available until 2:30 p.m. Time out evaluation will open at the end of the session, 4 p.m. until 5:30 p.m. only. Time in link will be posted from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. every 5 minutes by our tech team. Time out link will be posted on the page with a reminder that it will close at 5:30 p.m. And lastly, CPD certificates will be made available after 15 days only if all reminders have been followed. Now that we're done with the attendance guidelines, I would like to greet everyone a good afternoon. I'm Micaela Alabado, your MC for today, and I'm very pleased to welcome you all in the Trinity Talks Trends in Medical Laboratory Science in Fourth Industrial Revolution. I would like to invite now Ms. John C. Margot Rualio to invoke an opening prayer for us to be followed by the Trinity University of Asia hymn and our national anthem.
Let us put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. O God of creation, guide us that we may know you as the source of life and everything that is good. O God of salvation, guide us that we may humbly acknowledge our sins, receive and share your forgiveness, love, and peace. O God of wisdom, guide us that we may know your purpose for our existence, always seeking your counsel and growing in your wisdom and grace. O Blessed Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, keep us in your love and mercy that we may value life in communion with you and one another in Trinity University of Asia. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Hayang magiliw, kelos ng sinakanan, alam ng puso.
Thank you, Ms. Rualio. And now, to commence our Trinity Talk, I am pleased to have the Dean of the Trinity University of Asia's College of Medical Technology, Dr. Mark D. Francisco.
To our fellow Trinitians, colleagues in the practice of medical technology profession, guests, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant afternoon to everyone. Today, as part of the TUA-CMT's 54th MedTech Day celebration, we welcome you all to another edition of Trinity Talk entitled Trends in the Medical Laboratory Science in the Fourth Industrial Revolution. There are three distinguished resource speakers for this webinar to share their knowledge and expertise on the given topics in the field of modern medical technology practices. Together, let us enjoy this afternoon with learning. Again, welcome and maraming salamat po.
And now, on to our webinar proper. I would like to call on Dr. Michael O. Baklig to introduce our first speaker.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm greatly honored and privileged to introduce our first distinguished speaker. Dr. Malaya P. Santos is the Associate Dean and Head of the Medical Education Unit of St. Luke's Medical Center, College of Medicine, William H. Quasha Memorial. She has received several awards, such as the St. Luke's Medical Center Researcher Award in recognition of her advocacies in tropical medicine and healthcare education, the Philippine Science High School Alumni Recognition Gawad Lagablak Award for exemplary service to the community and the nation, and the World Federation for Medical Education Best Paper Award. Doc Maya is a fellow of the Philippine Dermatological Society, a member of the Technical Working Group for the development of a public health track for career progression and specialization of physicians, and Professor 4 of the Department of Pathology, St. Luke's Medical Center, College of Medicine, William H. Quasha. Ladies and gentlemen, to talk about trends in medical laboratory science, bridging teaching and practice, let us all welcome Dr. Malaya P. Santos.
Good afternoon. May I please confirm if I can be heard?
Yes, Doc.
Since my slides are here beside me, I think I just need to be spotlighted so that it comes out bigger in the screen. Thank you so much. And also, I have a prepared Padlet board. I hope that you can also contribute to this. Just there. I pasted it in the chat. Oh, you also pasted it. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so I think I can be seen and I can be heard. Please confirm. Thank you.
Yes po, Doktora.
Okay. So, hello and welcome everybody. My name is Dr. Malaya Santos and I am a faculty member at the St. Luke's Medical Center College of Medicine. And I would like to thank the organizers for this opportunity to share perspectives on the current trends in education. Before anything else, I would like to honor our educators and learners for all that you do for the health professions. Our presence here today is testament to our collective dedication, resilience, adaptability, and support for each other. The past few years have neither been easy nor perfect, and yet we are here because we are tied together by a common goal and a common purpose. I would just like to introduce my unit, the Medical Education Unit. I was appointed as the founding head of and associate dean for the Medical Education Unit in 2019. I report directly to the dean, Dean Susan Pelea Nagtalon, and under my office are three important units: the Curriculum Committee, Faculty Development, and Teaching Innovations. We were not really aware at the time that the pandemic would hit in less than a year, but the presence of our three units working together were instrumental in our pandemic response. Prior to 2020, teachers were at varying stages of exploration and adaptation with regard to the use of technology for teaching. COVID-19 left us with little choice but to transition overnight, regardless of our state of readiness. On your screen is a baseline assessment that we conducted in 2019, showing that most of our stakeholders, students, faculty, and staff alike, had rated themselves as either beginners or being unfamiliar with the use of technology. This graphic shows the journey that we undertook beginning in September 2019 when the Medical Education Unit was established. And we began putting in plans for the Curriculum Committee, Faculty Development, and Teaching Innovations groups to begin working together. In March 2020, as we all know, we went into educational lockdown. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but ours is one of the harshest and longest educational lockdowns in the world. And we still, up to this point, have not yet completely emerged from this educational lockdown. Our school continued teaching, feeling that it was our mandate and our responsibility to continue doing our best to prepare medical students for the future practice of medicine. We had anticipated to a certain extent that the lockdowns would extend more than were initially thought. And so, looking back, we feel that it was really a good decision to be able to continue teaching. By April and May 2020, we began to innovate with assessments. We introduced varied types of assessments, including projects, discussion boards, quizzes, and asynchronous proctored and unproctored exams through the learning management system. This experience allowed us to explore the different types of assessments going beyond just multiple choice examinations. As the years progressed, we continued to innovate with introducing different platforms for learning, both for video conferencing and for student-led, student-centered, asynchronous, and self-paced learning. I will be sharing some of these experiences with you over the next few minutes. By June and July 2021, we entered into the new academic year armed with the lessons that we had learned in the initial pivot to online learning. And by August 2021, we had sort of already settled into a balance of synchronous and asynchronous learning. And beginning this academic year, we were able to bring back all of our students, including the pre-clinical years, with around 50% on-site learning. Oh, sorry. Okay, so for this session, I would like us to build upon our collective experience in both health professions education and online education. It is often said that we learn not only from experience, but from reflecting upon this experience. I invite everyone to join me in revisiting the innovations we have implemented in the past decade, both before and during the pandemic. And I understand that these innovations are not unique to any individual institution. We have some innovations, as I'm sure you have as well. Together, let us aspire to translate these lessons into concrete recommendations as we move forward into the post-pandemic environment. In 2017, I was privileged to listen to a talk by Jennifer Doudna, the biochemist PhD who developed the technique for CRISPR, or gene editing. She made a little joke at the time about how CRISPR makes gene editing almost as simple as video editing. And I'm sure it was just a joke. And this definitely goes beyond my personal expertise, but I just wanted to share this because I was enthralled and fascinated by her lecture and all the entire world that was opened up. And this is just one aspect and one example of how change is upon us in the fourth industrial revolution. Technology, digital and otherwise, has permeated into all aspects of our lives, from health service delivery to banking, leisure, and education. The COVID pandemic has been superimposed upon several ongoing transitions: the move towards outcome based education, the passing of the UHC or Universal Healthcare Law, and the digital age. I begin by reaffirming our fundamental obligation as educational institutions to redirect our instruction, research, and service towards the broader goal of addressing priority health needs of the patients and populations we are mandated to serve as a profession. This image is taken from the seminal Lancet report by Frank and Chen in 2010, an explicit reminder of the interrelationship between the health and education systems. In order to be relevant, health professions education in every discipline and specialty and field must be informed by the real world needs of health systems. We are well aware that one of the greatest obstacles to universal healthcare implementation and strengthening of the health systems in the country is the current mismatch between the needs of primary healthcare and the skills of the available health human resources. Your profession, ours, and many other allied professions must work together towards this goal. This mismatch is within our power to address, and we must rise to this task. We can no longer ignore that change is upon us, and our task as educators is to mirror these real world changes in our education and training setting. Unlike traditional models that focus primarily on content and instruction, competency based and outcome based education is an approach that begins by identifying the needs of health systems and professional practice in order to determine the competencies, that is, the knowledge, skills, and attitudes that are required for service delivery in the health professions. In so doing, curricula can be better tailored to achieve and assess these competencies, as well as learner performance and deficiencies. Emphasizing the desired learning outcomes also promotes greater transparency and accountability to all learners, policymakers, educators, and stakeholders. We must never forget that the primary purpose of education is to improve the practice of our profession. The pandemic has further highlighted the importance of placing pedagogy before the use of technology, despite how important it has become in service continuity. Nevertheless, whether we are in an online, on site, blended, or hybrid mode, we must remember that active engagement will always promote deeper, more meaningful learning, and that yes, there are opportunities and options and strategies for engagement even in online and hybrid learning. Because I mainly deal with educators, I give a reminder that as educators, we must be equipped with the skills to redesign learning accordingly. The program outcomes, which I searched online from the CHED for medical laboratory science, and I hope I found the correct document, include technical competence, analytical and critical thinking, collection, analysis, and protection of health information, interpersonal personal skills, leadership and ethical practice, the application of research skills, community-oriented activities, lifelong learning, and teaching and communication skills. These outcomes are mirrored also in the same outcomes for medical students. I will thus divide my talk into several parts, and I will go over a few trends that I have identified. However, before we go into that, I just wanted to place here a sort of a menu of the different strategies that we use in instruction: plenary teaching, laboratory teaching, small group teaching, technology enhanced learning, and other ancillary and innovative means for promoting transfer of skills, knowledge, and attitudes. Back in 2018, Simpson predicted both a shift and an expansion of job roles of the academe beyond the traditional provision of content in the information age when content is no longer within our monopoly, content is available for everyone to see literally at our fingertips. Given this, we are also expected to select and curate content which we ourselves did not necessarily create. We are also expected to develop the skills for using data to assess performance, as well as be designers, engineers, and architects of technology enabled learning environments. And this applies to any field or discipline, both health professionals and outside of the health field. This pandemic further highlighted the importance of being deliberate in how we redesign instruction. So I have identified these trends: digitalization, simulation, flipped classroom, interprofessional education, authentic assessment, and lifelong self-directed learning. Prior to 2020, we all, both students and the learners alike, we travel in a multi-lane highway. Some of us are more advanced than others. Some are innovators and early adopters. The majority would be somewhere in the middle, and towards the end would be the late majority and what we call the laggards. And this is a reality that we need to address. However, as we know, COVID-19 left us with little choice, and everyone had to transition overnight, regardless of our state of readiness. And what we initially did is better given the term emergency remote learning, which may or may not have been well designed online teaching. Of course, now, 2 or 3 years later, we have to begin to revisit our experience and pick up lessons in order to move forward with better quality education as our resources and contexts allow. Sorry about that. Because as we know, in the end, despite our desire for digital transformation, it was not institutional strategy that brought it about. It was really COVID. However, there are a lot of silver linings because it also accelerated a lot of changes that were probably due but were difficult to implement in the traditional environment. And now the immense amount of innovation that has occurred across all fields and institutions and disciplines is something that we can work on and build on together. So in 2020, Go and Sanders, as shown in this article, stated that it is unlikely that there will be a return to the previous approaches in education, especially with regard to the use of technology for teaching and learning. In the face of the disruptive changes brought about by the pandemic, technology was employed to maintain and continue teaching and learning. And like Simpson, they predicted that the use of emergent technologies such as artificial intelligence and virtual reality are likely to play a greater role in the future of education. In 2022, much of what they envisioned has indeed come to pass. Technology adoption was greatly accelerated due to the pandemic, and many of the trends predicted by both Simpson and Go have already been incorporated into current practice in various degrees. Baticulon et al. On this study are quick to remind us of the challenges that our learners face. In a study published in 2021, they classified barriers under 5 categories: technological, individual, domestic, institutional, and community. The authors concluded that implementing student-centered interventions, educators will play a significant role in addressing these challenges both during the COVID pandemic and beyond. This recent photo shows our students practicing venipuncture on task trainers. In traditional education, we would practice this on ourselves or on actual patients. Simulation training is the wave of the future. It promotes patient safety by allowing students to perform procedures on mannequins and task trainers to develop the proper psychomotor skills and theories first before they move on to real patients. Of course, this does not mean that our learners will not do the procedures on real patients. It simply means that there is an intermediate step of simulation before moving on into a real world setting. And the advantage of simulation settings is that they are safe and they allow students more opportunities to make mistakes in a safe environment without causing harm to each other or to their patients. In the next few slides, I will be sharing some of the initiatives developed at my school, and I understand that many similar ones were also developed in other institutions. clinical augmentation was a struggle during the completely online years and months. Here is a platform that we use for virtual patients, which helps students develop clinical reasoning. And I understand that clinical reasoning is also something that is important in the allied health professionals. This is an AI or artificial intelligence powered gamified tool that allows students to interact virtually with virtual patients, usually in an emergency room setting. So, what actually happens is that they have to address the problems brought to them by the patients, and there is potential, for instance, for the patient to deteriorate and even die. So, the principle of this is that if you remember that this happened to you in a safe and virtual simulated setting, you should remember not to do those interventions, or at least to do the interventions more properly when faced with an actual patient in the real world setting. Today, as educators, we need to accept that learning can and does occur even when we are not together with our students. Although we, as educators, are a generation of digital migrants, we must learn to see technological tools as tools for achieving learning objectives. As such, they should be seen as transformative rather than frightening. In this hyper-connected world with digital migrant learners, we need to learn to properly use these tools to optimize learning. And always, learning outcomes and pedagogies must lead the choice and use of technology and not the other way. So all of this requires tremendous adaptations. As teachers, we need to feel valued. We need to feel that we are needed and that we make a difference. In the age of information, the reality is that we are no longer the sole source of knowledge. And for some of us as teachers, this can be deeply disturbing. We worry that digital technology might one day render us obsolete or irrelevant. But I personally don't think this is the case at all. As teachers, empathy, humanism, and our wealth of prior experience will always be of value. We simply need to be able to adapt and acquire the skills of the digital age. We also need to be willing to let go of some of our old and outdated practices. For one, it is time for us to rethink the familiar role of sage on the stage or lecturer so that we can begin to flip the classrooms and explore the limitless potentials of being a guide on the side. Rather than simply deliver content, our new task is to help our learners develop and take accountability for their own learning in an ecosystem that they are better equipped to navigate than we ourselves will ever be. We also know that learning is not only an academic endeavor, but also a social one. Learning and education lays the foundation for the development of personal and professional networks. And even when our students and classrooms were empty, we continued to be deliberate in developing and in producing opportunities for interaction and social interaction between our students. Interprofessional education is defined as learning with, from, and about other professions. It mimics the 21st century professional practice setting where healthcare is delivered by teams and not by individuals working alone. Teams of highly specialized professionals with different roles and responsibilities must be able to work together cohesively as a team. In the conventional clinical setting, uh, clinical training setting, teamwork and collaboration are mostly learned through observation and role modeling as part of what we call the hidden curriculum. In an attempt to place these outcomes into the formal curriculum, we had workshops on team science and self-directed learning. We also had interactive sessions on communication as part of our virtual outpatient simulation exercises for students. Professionalism, in particular, is of fundamental importance to medicine and to society. As such, it should be taught explicitly and assessed throughout the continuum of education. It cannot be left solely to the hidden curriculum. So in 2020, at the height of the lockdowns, we pioneered an online service learning elective for clerks and interns with the goal of developing leadership, collaboration, nationalism, and social accountability, combining authentic experiential learning with community engagement and reflection. So these are also strategies that can be replicated not only in the health professions and the allied health professions, but even in non-health related fields. So my own work in education is strongly influenced by my background in public health, and my personal journey to adopt technology predated the pandemic. Despite being a semi-self-proposed professed technophobe, I felt that online learning had immense potential to enable knowledge acquisition and self-directed, student-centered, self-paced learning. This led to a pilot project in 2019 to develop and evaluate e-learning materials on professionalism and social accountability. We continue to use these materials up to the present. So the next topic that I would like to discuss is authentic and outcome-based assessments. In the health professions, we know that we are content heavy, and many of our assessments rely on multiple choice and identification and similar knowledge-based questions. While we cannot deny that tests are an important means to measure knowledge, there are other domains of learning, such as attitude, psychomotor skills, and the soft skills, communication, collaboration, and leadership, which are not as easy to measure through testing. This is why we need to move towards adopting multimodal and authentic assessments that mirror the real world settings and are guided by the outcomes and competencies we need to develop in our learners. The pandemic allowed us to introduce more types of formative as well as summative assessments. And Miller's pyramid is a foundational principle, which is also very much relevant to all the health professions, which talks about a stepwise progression of knowing or knowledge, knowing how to do, showing how to do it, and finally doing it in the real world setting. So this allowed us to do rapid prototyping and evaluation of different innovative approaches to assessment of the different domains of learning, including knowledge, skills, and attitudes, alongside the different innovations in teaching and learning. So the pandemic further highlighted the importance of placing pedagogy before technology. And we have to prepare ourselves and our learners alike for a journey of lifelong learning. As we continue to navigate the varied permutations of bringing our students online and on-site, we have tried our best to go beyond video conferencing to design activities that support not only cognitive but also social and emotional learning, promoting human interaction even online through collaborative team-based assignments, online gamification, and online interactive whiteboards. I am not currently able to check our Padlet, but I hope that you can also contribute to this discussion. Despite the hardships of the forced and rapid pivot to online learning in 2020, digital tools were the single most important adaptation that allowed us to continue serving both students and patients. As a silver lining to the seismic events of the past 2 years, I believe that we are now more confident in our collective ability to face any type of disaster, natural or otherwise, that might threaten our service continuity. This diagram was generated from the thematic analysis of the data we collected in a study in 2019. And in order to harness technology to improve learning, we must also deliberately work to create an enabling environment by improving their digital infrastructures, building awareness and capacity, providing technical and administrative support for all stakeholders, staff, students, and faculty alike. Over the past 2.5 years, we have pushed the limits of what we can and cannot teach online. And it is critical that we assess our experience and identify which innovations deserve to stick around even as we resume more in-person learning. Moving forward, my own experience validates the robust body of literature that supports the principle of combining online and on-site activities. This composite photo shows the hybrid system that allows students who are online and on-site to simultaneously participate. There are many ways to establish this using different platforms. What we have done is actually prioritize specific sessions for on-site delivery. Those include skills and simulations, basic science laboratory, clinical encounters with real and standardized patients, and high-stakes exams and assessments. I just wanted to quickly go through a few frameworks that were very useful in our online transition. This is the ADDIE framework for analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation. It is an iterative cycle of planning, implementation, and evaluation, which was central to our strategy for digital transformation. The pandemic further showed us the different lessons, and it has not been perfect, and it definitely has not been easy. Here are some of the lessons that we have learned and the challenges that we encountered, including resistance to change, poor digital infrastructures, which is a given in our setting. Variable readiness, student assessment continues to be a challenge, and mental health. We did learn that communication is key, that it is important to engage with all our stakeholders. We have to have a higher tolerance for dissent because different people have different experiences and different opinions. And only by processing these different opinions can we actually come to a consensus for the direction of innovation. Conflict management and psychological safety were other things that we continued to implement and aspire for. Virtual communities of practice developed during the pandemic, whereas before our faculty were mainly divided into disciplines and departments. The bridging of space and time on Zoom allowed us to bring them all together. We even had online tapihan sessions, in addition to all of the trainings that we conducted on pedagogical and technological principles. We also had sessions on music, on art, and the matters of the heart. So although we lack the time to go into this in detail, I just wanted to share the TPAC framework, which is also critical in redesigning teaching, learning, and assessment. It talks about the three domains of knowledge for teachers, including content, pedagogical, and technological knowledge, emphasizing the dynamic interplay and the points at which they intersect with TPAC, technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge at the very center. What we did learn is that you don't necessarily have to have all of these types of knowledge, but that if you lack certain domains, you can collaborate with others. And in my college, we were able to create a team of support educational technologists that continue to collaborate with our faculty in developing the different learning materials, even up to the present. The other framework is Fuentedura's SAMR model, which consists of 4 layers: substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. The first two, augmentation and substitution, are considered enhancement steps, whereas modification and redefinition are the transformative steps. Again, building capacity in using the affordances of technology allows teachers and learners alike to be more deliberate in how and why they adopt technology. The past few years have shown us the importance of innovating and adapting, and I would like to end by saying that it is equally important to build upon tradition, even as we continue to develop and innovate. I quote, "Tradition without innovation risks stagnation, but growth without roots risks instability." We simply need to find a balance that is appropriate for the context within which we practice and teach our craft. This graphic was adapted from a mantra of the late Paul Farmer, who was a huge giant in global health. He talked about the importance of staff, space, and systems, and this graphic adds social support. This is just a reminder that education is not only content and instruction. Being able to optimize the different tools for education, particularly during the seismic events that have preceded in the preceding years, we also have to build an enabling environment. And this is something that we need to do as teachers, as learners, and as administrators. Faculty development was another aspect of ensuring quality education. There are many different ways, both formal and informal, group and individual. And at the center of all of this is mentorship. Throughout this roller coaster ride, one of the most important lessons for me personally was the importance of mentorship and community support. In any setting, the mentoring relationship, especially when done effectively, has immense potential of reciprocal and bidirectional benefit for both mentor and mentee. This is something that many of us experienced during the pandemic, sometimes with a shifting and reversal of roles with younger but more tech-savvy friends and colleagues. Another is adaptive expertise, which is defined as the ability to formulate responses to novel problems, in contrast to routine expertise, which relates more to accuracy and efficiency. So adaptive expertise focuses on innovation and creativity. And this is something that we need to develop in our learners. This type of expertise will be seen as a requirement for continuing success in anticipated and unstable and or evolving environments, precisely the environment that we were forced into by the COVID pandemic. So we are also doing our best to promote psychologically safe learning environments where learners are able to express ideas and concerns without fear of shame or retribution. Psychological safety has several practical benefits. It prevents errors, drives creativity, and values inclusion. Often discussed in the context of patient safety and quality improvement, psychological safety is equally important in education. Understanding the conditions that enable workers in healthcare and education to navigate the intense, varied, and complex needs of their workplace, sorry about that, is critical to their own success and to the well-being of those that they serve. In a setting where the poorest populations lack access to quality health systems and education must both provide not equal but equitable support as we work for social justice by endeavoring to correct the root causes of inequity and disparity. So again, I end by saying we must lead the use of technology through pedagogy. And I quote here from Benjamin Franklin that tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I learn, emphasizing the importance of learner engagement in any setting or profession. As we prepare to emerge from this pandemic, we stand at the threshold of transformation. As with any complex problems, there are no perfect solutions, just a lot of trade-offs. What is important is that we are deliberate in choosing what to trade off. The esteemed Dr. Nelson Mandela has many memorable quotes about education. Not everyone may be aware that Dr. Mandela earned his education at UNISA, a distance corresponding university which is the precursor of the current open and distance universities. UNISA allowed him the opportunity to access tertiary education under the political climate of apartheid. Distance education and online learning institutions around the world have a long history of serving as a platform for inclusion and social justice in education, especially for non-traditional and disadvantaged populations. There are many lessons to be learned that we can implement in our current setting. So with this, I would like to acknowledge those that I represent from my school, our Dean, Dr. Susan Pelea Nagtalon, and our team at the Medical Education. Thank you very much for your time and your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Santos, for sharing your innovations in teaching future healthcare professionals. I agree with the statement that simulation testing is the way of the future in order to train the psychomotor skills of our students prior to conducting the actual procedures with real patients. Also, in the importance of faculty development, the quality of our learners will just be as good as the quality of the skills of their mentors. Hence, it is critical that the faculty continuously learn and improve as well. I'm sure academicians and trainers that we have in the audience would also like to ask you questions. So to our dear audience, please input your questions in the chat box. Our tech team will collate this for our open forum later. Again, just a reminder, time in attendance will only be open until 2:30 p.m. Attendance and evaluation are required for CPD units. Now, for the introduction of our next speaker, let us have Mr. Nathaniel Veron M. Casamina.
So good afternoon. Our last speaker is a graduate of BS Medical Technology and Doctor of Medicine program at University of Santo Tomas, year 2000 and 2004. He is a pathologist by profession with subspecialization in molecular pathology at St. Luke's Medical Center, Bonifacio Global, Taguig. His professional affiliations includes pathologies at Philippine Orthopedic Center from 2011 up to present, and pathologist at St. Luke's Medical Center, BGC, from 2014 up to present. He is a member of Philippine Society of Pathologists and Association for Molecular Pathology. He was also a professional trainer on the Professional Expert course on triple negative breast cancer conducted virtually last April 18 and 19 and October 16, 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome our last speaker, Dr. Jose Jasper L. Andal.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the organizers for this chance to share my insights on this very important topic, specifically on trends in medical laboratory science, focusing on what we currently do in the molecular pathology lab for our patients. And so before we begin, I do have some disclosures here because my line of work does require frequent collaboration with some biotech firms and some pharma companies. I am affiliated currently with also with St. Luke's Medical Center. Okay, now to begin, here's the outline of what we will be discussing this afternoon. Because there's a lot of things to cover, I will have to provide sort of an initial high-level overview of where we are right now in current practice, and then segue to what we can expect in the sort of the near future for the clinical lab. And I do hope I do hope these topics sort of inspire you to ask questions later, specifically on some of the details. And I hope I can provide some answers. So even though this event revolves around the theme of the fourth industrial revolution, I think it would be best to start off on the same page for everyone and begin with where we are now and with the current tests used both locally and abroad in the realm of molecular pathology. And this would include single gene tests and assays on several platforms or technological methods like real-time PCR, both for cancer, hereditary disease, and infectious diseases, like in COVID-19 PCR test, right? And in the past decade, we have been playing sort of catch up with other countries in terms of DNA sequencing, using next generation sequencing, again, in cancer, infectious disease. And recently, this has been more widely used in tracing the origins of microorganisms, right? Especially in phylogenetics and the COVID-19 variants. Okay, we'll then go over the trends that may come into routine practice in the near future. And I did place sort of near future-ish trends because some of the methods here that I enumerated and which will be discussed later sort of have been in use already in some clinical research for the past few years. There's a lot of published papers on these topics and methods. But again, locally, there's just sort of trying to catch up with these guys with what's being done abroad. Okay, so why do we need to discuss these things? Because of this is where the clinical lab is headed in the future, and some of these technologies are being used right now, again, as I mentioned earlier. And from a more practical standpoint, rather, we want to be aware of these trends because these are possible career options for medical technologists and lab scientists in the currently graduating from your undergrad. So this is a very good overview into what you can look into as possibilities for job opportunities. And then we'll also state some unmet needs and challenges, focusing more on the local setting. Okay, so this is the current state of what we do in the molecular lab in clinical practice right now, at least focusing more locally. So let me emphasize that this is just for the clinical laboratory, meaning that's a different space that we work under when we are dealing with routine tests for actual patient care. So this is sort of outside from the research realm, which is what is being done not routinely, but more for clinical studies, basic science, and that is a whole different field, a whole wider field, and deserves another session for discussion. Okay, so I will be focusing on the more commonly used molecular lab tests in practice right now. So we are using that for detecting pathogens, both single pathogens like hard to grow organisms and viruses. Also, we use that in bigger panel or what we call syndromic testing. Sort of, we lump these pathogens together in a multiplex PCR based fashion to be more sort of efficient in the use of these samples in the patient's finances. PCR-based tests and molecular tests are also being used to detect genes that are associated with potential antimicrobial resistance. In the realm of cancer, which is where I sort of lean into in my practice, we use molecular pathology techniques to detect what we call as biomarkers, and we use these biomarkers to help diagnose these malignancies, also to help predict whether a certain tumor or cancer will respond or not to a specific targeted drug, and also to help determine whether these biomarkers are associated with a bad prognosis or a good prognosis for the patient. We do these things, again, as sort of single gene assays, or can be in the form of NGS gene panels. Point my pointer. Okay. Also, there is a need to mention hereditary disease testing. Again, we can do this by testing specific genes, or in more efficiently using gene panels, also by next generation sequencing. And this is what we will be discussing later on. Again, in the interest of time, we may not be able to cover everything, but note that there are other applications, such as in pharmacogenomics. So this is just to give a brief overview of that. We detect sequence variations or SNPs in enzymes that are responsible for metabolizing certain drugs, and that can help sort of guide the dosage of certain drugs. There is also an application in paternity testing, in forensic medicine, also in transplant testing, and also to help in vitro fertilization or reproductive medicine in terms of pre-implantation genetic testing. Okay, so on to the first application, which is in cancer and oncology, and this is sort of a low-hanging fruit in terms of how we can apply genomic medicine. And what we have learned from the Human Genome Project as applied to clinical practice is in trying to detect certain biomarkers to better care for our cancer patients. So again, as I mentioned earlier, we can detect these changes in the genes, and we associate those changes or variations in the sequence to certain biological information, and that's why we call them as biomarkers. So roughly, we can characterize these biomarkers or subtype them as predictive, diagnostic, or prognostic. Diagnostic biomarkers, as the name implies, they help us diagnose certain tumors, help us sort of subtype these tumors, and that helps us pathologists in terms of giving more accurate classification to our medical oncologists to better care for the cancer patient. Predictive biomarkers, again, as the name implies, they help us predict whether a certain cancer or tumor will or will not respond to certain drugs. So sort of the poster child for this recently, at least, is lung cancer. And lung cancer is one of the more common cancers, unfortunately, and is also one of the more lethal ones. And recently, in the past few years, past decade, there has been an explosion of both clinical research and in terms of trying to determine and develop specific targeted drugs to, again, target specific mutations. And so sort of that helps us determine whether this group of patients or this group of patients will respond to a certain drug depending on whether or not they have the specific mutation. So before this, we sort of classified lung tumors, lung carcinomas at least, as by what we see under the microscope as pathologists. We classify them as sort of non-small cell carcinoma or small cell carcinoma, and then from that, help classify them as adeno or squamous cell carcinomas. So we still do that, but on top of that morphologic classification, there's also the current practice of doing genomic profiling or comprehensive gene testing for specific mutations and variations in the lung cancer genome. And that helps us classify and subclassify these tumors, not just on the morphology, but on what mutations drive these tumors to proliferate. And that is very important because once we know what drives the tumor to proliferate and grow, we can sort of target that driver mutation with a specific drug, and that can help control the disease and give better survival and better prognosis for these patients. So again, we can classify these tumors based on what the mutations are that are driving these tumors. In Asians, there's a lot more lung cancers that are driven by EGFR mutations in contrast to Caucasians. And that is also one of the reasons why there's a need to do this test locally, at least to help set up our own genomic data in terms of a more local and more specific data for our patients. Because we do see some ethnic differences in these malignancies. So again, there are different types of mutations. So seen here in these pie charts, we have EGFR, KRAS. Smaller pieces of the pie chart are sort of caused by rarer mutations that are also very important, like ALK, ROS, MET. So these are mutations or alterations in different genes, and potentially we can sort of guide treatment by detecting these mutations. So this is very important in our patients right now. And one of the reasons why there's a need to do these tests in a more comprehensive fashion, and one of the sort of technological platforms that we use to do that is by what we call as next generation sequencing. So sequencing by itself is basically reading the bases in our patients and our samples DNA. So these nucleotides have a specific sequence, and these sequencing platforms basically sort of spells out and reads the base sequence of the DNA samples. So there are different methods of how we can do this. Sort of the first generation is what we call Sanger sequencing, from the person who sort of first described and developed this method. For a time, that was very that was the only thing that was being used to sequence, and it's very cumbersome, but was pretty efficient in terms of small gene targets, small regions of interest that you want to sort of amplify and sequence. But if, as you can see in the pie chart here, there are multiple targets that we need to sequence for a single cancer patient. So that's why there's a need to do this in a sort of a massively parallel fashion, targeting and sequencing multiple genes at the same time in a single experiment. So that's why we there's a need to do next generation sequencing for these patients, because these patients usually have very small samples to begin with. So this is a more efficient use of those limited samples. These first two technologies are sort of what we can consider as sort of short read sequencing. Basically, we have to fragment the DNA into smaller fragments that are more manageable to sequence. There is an upcoming, sort of not really upcoming, but it's currently being used more in the research realm, which is called long-read sequencing, such as the Oxford Nanopore technology. Basically, it reads longer fragments of DNA without the need for fragmentation. So it has its own advantages and also pros and cons. Again, one way to look at sequencing technologies is by the scale of what we can do. In terms of the scale of the sequencing experiments, Sanger sequencing is good and efficient if you're just sequencing like a single exon and a single gene. But because we need to sequence multiple genes at the same time, there's a need to do this in a massive scale. And that's why NGS is really the way and to go in the future. And part of the demand for these upcoming for these newer technologies is that it generates a lot of data. So imagine you're sequencing millions of bases in your next generation sequencing experiments, and you're analyzing and your experiments generate a lot of data. So there's a need to use what we call as bioinformatics software. And this is one of the sort of the realms of molecular pathology that there's a local demand for. So I encourage everyone to sort of look into the possibility of going to this field. Basically, because NGS turns out a lot of data, you need to sort of have these software solutions to manage the data and manipulate it in such a way that it's clinically useful. First is you need to sort of align the base sequence of your NGS data to a reference genome, sort of line it up against what we call sort of a reference or normal, quote unquote, the normal sequence of the DNA. And then from there, be able to detect whether there are changes in the sequence, variations or mutations, and then annotate those variants by their clinical significance, and also along the way assess the quality of our sequencing data. There is also what we call as microarray based assays. So these are useful also in different applications, such as in gene expression profiles. Before, these were largely used again more in research, but there are current clinical assays that we use this for, such as in breast cancer, and also in vitro fertilization, in pre-implantation genetics. So these are basically methods that look at use sort of arrays of DNA oligos. Basically, you again fragment your sample and then generate complementary DNA from your RNA sample, and then hybridize that on your microarray, and then generate expression data from that experiment. So you will have an idea whether a certain gene is expressed or not based on signals read off on that microarray. And this is very important because changes in the DNA are clinically relevant only if they are expressed at the protein or the RNA level. Remember, in the central dogma of biology, DNA is transcribed to RNA and translated to proteins, and the proteins are actually the ones that have an effect on the phenotype of the organism and of humans, of our patients. So looking at the RNA and at the protein level is very important for these gene expression profiles, because that's where the phenotypes are derived from. Sort of the signs and symptoms are caused by the changes in at the protein and RNA level. There's also the need to do what we call as liquid biopsies. Basically, these are assays that detect circulating cell-free DNA, which basically DNA that are dissociated and or excreted into the circulation outside of these cells. The premise of liquid biopsies is that you can detect tumor DNA shed from these tumors that are available to detect in the peripheral blood, and that's the value proposition of this is that instead of doing an invasive tissue biopsy, a liquid biopsy using peripheral blood or other fluid samples is a more readily available and less invasive method for diagnosis, disease monitoring, and predicting possible early relapse or reoccurrence of the tumor. One of the methods that are currently used for liquid biopsies is what we call as digital PCR. It's basically not a new method. I first heard this way back in 2013 when I was doing my fellowship, and it's been around for a long time, but it's currently being used in clinical practice for liquid biopsies and also to help sort of do quality checks in libraries of NGS assays. But again, in the realm of liquid biopsies, the value of using digital PCR is that it's a very sensitive, analytically sensitive method for detecting variants and mutations in DNA and RNA's samples. It's basically similar to qPCR, but the key difference is that it's sort of digitized or compartmentalized into thousands of small reactions. Instead of having your PCR reaction in just one tube, you basically spread it out into thousands of droplets or compartments. And this helps it separate the reactions into nanoliter-sized microreactions. And this helps, and this sort of gives the researcher and the clinical lab scientist the ability to quantify in an absolute manner certain biomarkers. Also, it potentially has greater analytic sensitivity than qPCR. And because you're sort of compartmentalizing and minimizing your reactions, there's also the promise of less inhibition from inhibitors of your PCR reactions. Okay, so shifting from cancer to microbiology, there is an application of molecular techniques to microbiology because some organisms are hard to grow in the laboratory on cultures. Also, some of these pathogens are present in very small quantities in our patient samples. There's a need to use very sensitive and very specific methods to identify pathogens. For certain patients that are clinically, when doctors look at them, they look very septic or has a potential infection with a fever of unknown origin. But nothing grows on cultures, nothing can be detected by routine microbiologic tests. There's a need to identify pathogens by sort of non-biased approaches like by 16S sequencing, which is basically sequencing sort of RNA from that are common to microbes, and that instead of having a sort of a biased approach to detecting these pathogens, this is a sort of a non-biased approach, and that can help detect organisms that are not covered by the usual panels of multiplex PCR-based tests for these pathogens. So this is very important, especially nowadays that there are emerging and re-emerging pathogens. Sometimes this has a very important role in the potential to detect unknown pathogens when they come into our hospitals. Using NGS and also using bioinformatics, there is also the potential to sort of trace back where these organisms came from, and that's also the reason why we're able to sort of trace where the variants of COVID sort of have their lineages. That's why we're able to label these as the different variants, and this can also be applied for other pathogens as well. Just to sort of segue into other interests of mine personally, which I think will come into practice in the near future. These are methods that are currently being used not just in research settings but also in clinical tests abroad. And this is what we call as digital pathology. Basically, instead of having and limiting ourselves to what we see on glass slides under the microscope for these tumor samples, for these patient samples, those whole slides are sort of digitized and scanned into whole slide images. And you can sort of link this to patient data using computational methods. Also, an application is using ancillary tests like immunohistochemical stains, fluorescence markers to highlight what the different cells in the tumor microenvironment and how those cells interact in a two-dimensional fashion. And this is what we call spatial biology. Basically, how the tumor microenvironment interacts with the tumor, and that potentially has the promise of giving more precise biomarker data for these patients. Again, linking this to treatment response, to patient data, to clinical data, has a very promising future for clinical applications. There is also an interesting trend of using CRISPR-based diagnostic platforms. So this gene editing technology has been around and again has been mostly used in the research realm. But because of the relatively cheaper method of developing CRISPR-based technologies, this has the potential to change diagnostic testing in the future and is potentially also sensitive and very specific in terms of its applications. So this is another thing to look out for. Personally, I don't have experience with this technology as of yet, but from what I have looked into, it's very promising. Okay, just to sort of wrap things up, there are what we call as unmet needs, at least in a resource limited setting such as the Philippines. There is a local demand for expertise in the molecular lab because these are high complexity assays, especially NGS, cytogenetics, and the other methods that we described earlier. These are highly complex assays, and there's a steep learning curve to these assays. There's a demand for local expertise, and I hope some of you will look into the possibility of working in this realm, in this field. Also, bioinformatics, there's a need to manage the data and also to generate clinically relevant data from these large data sets. From a more patient-facing aspect, genetic counselors are needed, and locally, you need to have sort of a clinical eye, and also there's an advantage to knowing the technical aspect of these genetic tests to be sort of to be sort of an effective genetic counselor. You know the limitations of these assays that you are basing your genetic advice on for your patients, because still there is a need to man and manage the data from digital pathology. There's a need for a local expertise in that realm. And outside of these outside of the laboratory, what we do need from a bigger picture perspective is really systematic reforms in our healthcare system. We don't need dole outs from our government to sort of just tide us over into the next year. We need systematic changes in our healthcare system to be able to sort of reimburse these tests. These are costly tests, but these are really the current standard of practice abroad, and we are really lagging behind in this field. Also, one limitation is that even if these patients can and have these tests performed, if the treatments and the drugs are not locally available, it's not really practical for some of these patients if they can't fly out to get these expensive drugs. Also, better pay for healthcare workers and also for science and the tech researchers. There's a need for, again, systematic changes in how we do things locally. And before we wrap up, we are still in a pandemic, and currently, if you look really hard into how we responded to this pandemic and how we are not ready for the next one, there should be also reforms in how we can dynamically respond to the demands and threats of emerging and re-emerging pathogens. So I hope I sort of generated enough interest. And before we go, one more thing is that I have been talking for in the realm of sort of more on clinical testing and also alluded to some research-based assays. Before a specific test can be clinically useful for patients, they really need rigorous analytic and clinical validation. So the bedrock of what we do in the clinical lab is requires knowing the test performance in terms of analytical sensitivity, specificity, precision data, interferences. So the same methods that we've been using in the clinical lab for, let's say, a chemistry test will be the same principles that sort of we need to apply to molecular-based tests. And what we have learned from Elizabeth Holmes and the Theranos scandal is that you should really perform analytical and clinical validation before using these tests on patients, because there's a real potential for harm if you give out erroneous results. So with that, I hope we do have time for questions, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Andal, for sharing this very important updates in our laboratory, particularly the different molecular methods and their significance in cancer diagnosis, treatment management, and also in microbiology. Also, the presentation of the unmet needs in the Philippines, particularly the expertise in the molecular laboratory, bioinformatics, genetic counselors, and digital pathology staff. Also, systematic reforms in healthcare, reimbursement for testing, and treatment remuneration for healthcare workers. And now to our dear audience who have questions in this interesting subject, again, please input your questions in the chat box, and our tech team will collate this for the open forum later. Again, just a reminder, time-in attendance will only be open until 2:30 p.m. Attendance and evaluation are required for the CPD units. Evaluation form will be available at the end of the session until 5:30 p.m. And now for the introduction of our third and last speaker for this session, I would like to invite again Ms. Dr. Michael O. Buckley.
I feel privileged and honored to introduce our final speaker. Dr. Nilo T. Bugtay is the founding director of the Institute of Biomedical Engineering and Health Technologies of De La Salle University. He has received many awards, such as the Dr. Paulo Campos Award for Medical Research, granted by the Philippine Association for the Advancement of Science and Technology, patent certificate for an invention under the Agapay project entitled device for upper limb rehabilitation, and motor-driven actuator assembly at the Bureau of Patents Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines. He is also an awardee of the Leaders in Innovation Fellowship by the Newton Fund of the British Council and Royal Academy of Engineering, London, England, UK. Dr. Buktay received his Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering in the University of San Jose Recoletos, Cebu City. He finished his Master of Science in Manufacturing Engineering in De La Salle University and later earned his Doctor of Philosophy in Manufacturing Engineering in Loughborough University, England, UK. Dr. Bugtay is a full professor of the Manufacturing Engineering and Management Department of De La Salle University. To talk about trends for medical laboratory science in robotics, please welcome Dr. Nilo T. Bugtay.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending this talk organized by the Trinity University of Asia College of Medical Technology as part of their Medical Technology Week. I would also like to thank the organizers for being invited as one of their speakers to give a lecture on the trends for medical laboratory in robotics. It is also a pleasure and an honor for me to share with you as well our current research developments here at the Institute of Biomedical Engineering and Health Technologies at the De La Salle University. So here is the outline of my presentation for later. So we'll start with the robotics in a nutshell, then health technology transformation, then the trends, then we'll talk about the robotics in the laboratory and its requirements, and the Philippine National Harmonized R&D Agenda, then our initiatives at the De La Salle University under the Institute of Biomedical Engineering and Health Technologies. So to start, let's talk about robotics in a nutshell. So to define, first, robotics is an interdisciplinary branch of computer science and engineering which involves design, construction, operation, and use of robots. So the goal of robotics is to design machines that can help and assist humans. So there are several types. So una, meron tayong mga pre-programmed robots kagaya neto. It's a robotic arm used for industrial use. So it's pre-programmed. So perfect siya for to do simple and monotonous tasks. So kagaya niyan, it's pick and place. So typically, makikita niyo to sa mga assembly line, especially in manufacturing. Then we also have humanoid robots. So humanoid robots naman, it mimics human behavior. So it also performs human-like activities and is specifically designed na maging parang human talaga. Next is we also have autonomous robots. Autonomous robots naman is specifically designed siya na para maging little to zero human supervision. So through sensors na lang siya, they learn on its own. Then they also have their own decision-making structure dun sa pag-program sa kanya. So kusa na siya, alamin na niya kung ano yung kunyari, let's say, kagaya neto, alamin na niya yung path from one point to another. So bahala na siya dun. So it doesn't use any human operators na autonomous robots. Next is we also have teleoperated robots naman that use wireless network to enable human control from a safe distance. Then there are also the augmenting robot. So from the word itself, augmenting, so it augments yung current capacity or performance ng, let's say, human. So through the augmenting robots, kaya niyang palakasin anyone and stronger and faster. So kagaya nung nasa image, so using the augmenting robots, kaya niyang buhatin yung missile, then ilagay sa rack. So yan. So for robotics, so typically, ito yung mga typical use niya. So pinakauna is sa manufacturing. So makikita nyo naman dito, parang doon sa pre-programmed na mga robots natin kagaya ng robotic arm. So, manufacturing industry yung one of the oldest and most well-known user of robots. So, they work at dun sa assembly line. So, monotonous work yan na paulit-ulit dun sa pag-produce ng certain products such as eto nga cars and industrial equipment na rin. Then we also have logistics. So, mga robots that handle shipping, handling, and quality control robots. They are becoming a must-have for most retailers sa mga logistic companies. Then we also have home robots. So, kagaya nito yung Roomba Vac. So, autonomous robot na nagva-vacuum. So, they can be seen all over our homes, helping with chores, and reminding us ng mga schedule. And yun. So for travel din, so isa rin sa mga is kagaya nung kay Tesla, so self-driving self-driving cars. We also have those. Then of course sa healthcare. So ito yung pinaka-coverage ng magiging presentation nga. So robots in healthcare. So they span from robotic rehabilitation kagaya nakikita nyo up until even robotic assisted surgeries. So next is health technology transformation. So let's define health technologies first. So as per the World Health Organization, so these are medicines, medical equipment, assistive technologies, techniques, processes developed to solve health problems and improve the quality of life. So kahit ano basta ginagamit for health or for hospital or so yun ay health technologies. So ginagamit siya sa mga hospital to improve patient care quality. So we have 4 drivers of healthcare technology transformation. So we have data, clinical excellence, customer experience, and technology. So for data, so when we create new technology, researchers should always use accurate and reliable data to support and guide them in their next steps during development. So using data kasi, it is used to make objective decisions. So in order for you to know the next step and the right next step, so you have to have good data. Next is clinical excellence. So provides the robustness needed to deliver credible solutions to the customers. So behavioral sciences creates an understanding that delivered solutions are based on valid theories and proven to work, which will augment the customer experience while driving efficacy. So clinical excellence is both the customer experience, which is yung patient experience as well, and the doctor experience when using such technologies, and at the same time, how effective it is to cure, to diagnose, or whatnot, the patient. Next is customer experience. So products and services should be designed while having the customer or user in mind. So both the patient and the doctor. This should be made in such a way that it is simple, easy, and intuitive for customers to use. So this also helps in making the product more competitive. So if users find it more convenient to use compared to other products and services. And finally, technology. So it allows researchers to scale and to be secure, robust, and repeatable in project delivery. So data and digital technology are fundamental for the vision and application of connective health. So next is health technology trends. So first trend is digital health application. So ito yung mga mobile, through the use ng mga modern mobile technology natin, so mga smartphones natin and tablets, nakakagawa ng mga apps for mga patient records and monitoring. So kasama rin dito or connected dito yung mga personal health wearables din. So, instead of having those mga bulky na mga papers or maraming paper records, so kahit yung electronic health records, pwede na rin nandito para easy to access both the patient and the doctors. Then, again, connected then is the personal health wearables. So, isa sa kilala dito is yung Fitbit. Kaya mag-record na ng mga heart rate, blood pressure, activity levels, sleep quality. So, ayan. So example nga Fitbit, then we also have the Charge 5, and even yung Apple Watch, so kaya na rin. We also have yung sa Philips na wearable biosensor. Yan. So, next is telemedicine. So, during ng COVID, naging laganap. So, it will enable physicians to interact remotely with patients for consultation and active monitoring. So, due to the COVID, so kailangan minimal yung contact natin with others. So, dito pumasok ay naging useful ang telemedicine. So, we also have these different apps. Yan, Consulta MD, yan. The next is 3D printing and prosthetics. Come a long way since its debut. So, nagiging na rin, before, nagiging useful lang siya for siguro mga prototyping ng mga machines and devices. Ngayon, pwede na rin siya magamit for healthcare. So, especially in creating prosthetics. So, yan. Nag-evolve na rin siya ever since na naging useful na rin siya sa mga tissue engineering. So, typically sa 3D printing kasi plastic yung ginagawa for 3D printing. So, any 3D model magiging actual na object. So, ngayon, instead of the plastic, nagiging tissues and cells na. So, we can have tissue engineering using the technology in 3D printing. So, yan, mga examples. So, unlimited tomorrow, prosthetic arms. Next is non-invasive technology. So, mga wireless monitoring devices for vital signs. So, para siyang mga health wearables. Pero, through this kasi, mga physiological processes kayang i-monitor. So, eventually, it can be integrated sa mga damit. So, mga fibers of our clothing para maging real-time, maging matrack din ng, let's say, mga physicians nyo if needed. Ganun. Next is point-of-care diagnostics. So, mga point-of-care diagnostics, so mga rapid, mga test kits, nagiging mas compact na, no longer needing na pumunta pa sa mga laboratory. Eventually, kaya nang gawin sa home. So, baka eventually, kagaya nga niyan, DNA analysis through phone na lang. So, ikakabit nyo. So, or at home na mga DNA analysis, mga testing na lang. So, example nito yung sa blood sugar. So, kaya na maano. The next is, isa sa mga focus nga ng presentation would be on AI and robotics. So, malawak na yung use ng AI and robotics. So, from decision clinic, yung AI for clinical decision support, readmission, and claims processing. So, pwedeng gamitin doon. Then, si robotics naman, pwedeng from rehabilitation up until sa mga surgical na. So, yan. So, yan, kagaya niyan. So, we have robotic assisted operations such as surgeries. So, nagiging trend na siya sa mga hospital. Although, here in the Philippines, konti pa lang, 4 pa lang yung meron. So, we have Chinese Gen, PGH, we have rin, sa Medical City and sa St. Luke's. So, sila pa lang, especially yung Da Vinci robot. So, ito yung mga examples. So, Phenome for early cancer detection. And yun nga, isa sa mga kilala yung Da Vinci robot. So, AI and robotics are reshaping the healthcare industry from genetic testing and robotic surgery to cancer research and data collection. So, AI with robotics has made massive advancement that has turned the future into the present. Robotics in the laboratory. So, when we talk about robotics in the laboratory, it mostly involves laboratory automation. So, through laboratory automation kasi it maximizes the results, accuracy, and minimizes human errors. So, it also reduces manual work and increase productivity of the drug discovery process. So, we also have the term total laboratory automation coined by Masahide Sasaki. So, it is the automation of specimen processing done. So, it includes the initial specimen identification, decapping, labeling, and sorting. So, ayan. So, what is TLA? So, it is the automation of system that involves clinical culture-based testing or CCB. So, TLA systems can be used for both liquid and solid specimens but are more efficient with liquid such as urine. So, CCB testing, so since mostly nandito is mga medtech, so baka familiar na. So taking specimen, applying specimen to culture medium, streaking out plates, moving plates to incubators. So incubation system include a high resolution camera system for monitoring culture plates. So example. So ano benefits ng TLA? So it cuts down time spent performing manual inoculation. So allowing for staff to work on other tasks. So it free ups yung task para dun sa mga laboratory staff. So lalo na to kung something na monotonous or paulit-ulit or ano naman, same naman yung pag-process. So it can be automated using robotics. So it ensures consistent quality and efficiency. So usually ang mga robots nga hindi unlike sa human, syempre napapagod din, pero kapag robots kasi tuloy-tuloy lang, need siguro lang i-maintain, pero all throughout kaya naman siya makalibrate to give consistent quality and efficient result. So it is ideal for troubleshooting and instruction, allowing staff to review and compare result. So ayun, yung staff then they can double check. So and they can easily calibrate, especially with the current advancement in robotics and automation. So kaya itong magawa. So things to keep in mind when converting from manual to TLA. So una is reinforcing the floor to accommodate the instrument. So kagaya ng kung magpapasok kayo ng mga robotic arm, medyo may kabigatan ang mga robotic arm, especially if gagamitin sa mas malawakan na or mas malawak na system. So kailangan you'll have to look into the infrastructure then kung saan mo siya ilalagay, the building itself or yung mga floor to accommodate the instrument. So next is upgrading the computer servers to sustain larger data. So syempre when we're talking about robots, you'll be involved in computation. So lalo na kung may AI. So very important ang data processing nun. So with better data processing, lalo na kung need nyo ng real time, mas malalakas na computers ang kakailanganin. So transitioning to TLA compatible specimen collection system, then the staff needed na training prior to implementation. So of course, you have to train the staff to be familiar with the instruments or yung mga tools, yung mga technologies na ipapasok nyo for TLA. Then yung transitioning again, so more on the standards ng specimen collection system ninyo, kung ano yung magiging sistema, such as yung handling din ng specimen, so doon papasok. Then foster a positive culture for change. So positive culture for change. So, syempre, kapag nag-TTLA naman, hindi naman natin binabawasan yung staff or hindi naman natin tinatanggal sila. Pero, ina-upskill din natin. Need natin i-upskill yung mga laboratory staff natin pag pumasok na tong mga devices na to. So, para mas accepting sila for TLA. So readers versus workers. So a popular TLA setup is to divide the lab into readers and workers. So readers are in charge of observing cultures and interpreting their growth through screen. Then readers mark or flag the plates that are in need of further incubation or re-imaging. Workers are in charge of the marked plates, so they are responsible for ensuring that the plates arrive to their proper workstations for processing. So ito isa sa mga setup kapag nagka-TLA na. So, ang traditional setup natin, so when an incubator breaks down, the lab can simply move all the specimens to another incubator. Pero sa isang TLA setup naman, so system shutdowns are usually caused by scheduled software upgrades. However, unexpected downtimes can cripple the clinical laboratory. So, kailangan ng proper maintenance to minimize this problem. So, ganyan mangyari kapag kung nag-breakdown ang TLA ninyo. So, yun din parang downside of using the TLA. So, overall, TLA allows for increased capacity and minimal error in which will, in the long run, will make the change a well worth investment. So there are two types of laboratory automation. So one is modular. So as you can see here, so modular meaning kagaya niya, ang example natin is a robot arm with multiple instruments around it in which it can manipulate. So kapag robot arm kasi, example na to, so robot arm, so pick and place. So it can pick multiple types of, or it can manipulate different types of material or tools. So, and it can easily be changed. So, modular meaning nun, it will operate different instruments around it. While kapag whole lab automation naman, so it is process-centered. So, from the isang robot arm, may specific na instrument na siya. So, yeah. So, laboratory automation can be used as well in clinical laboratory systems and drug discovery laboratory systems. So, for clinical laboratory systems, so meron tayong workstation, laboratory information management system, sample transport system, specimen handling system, storage retrieval systems. So, for drug discovery naman, meron tayong plate readers, automated liquid handling system, robotic system, storage revival system, and dissolution testing systems. So, mga different types of robots being used in laboratory automation. So, una, we have pre-programmed robots for repetitive tasks. So, example nito is mga robotic arms. So, robotic arms kasi when you're gonna be using it, you can program kung saan specific siya pupunta, or there are some robotic arms na may mga sensors na kaya niya nang i-read. Kunyari, pwedeng kaya na niya makita yung color code. Let's say, naka-color code ang specimen niyo. So, may mga pwede tayong i-attach na sensor dyan para makita niya. So, yan, mga very flexible ang mga robotic arms. So, next is, we also have autonomous robots. So, usually, kagaya nakikita ninyo, is for transportation. So, autonomous robots for transportation. So, similar siya sa mga warehouse systems na nag-i-implement na ito. So, yung mga autonomous robots. There are also humanoid robots, so for complex processing. So, if it's something na usually, if it's something beyond the pre-programmed robot, so kagaya ng mga robotic arms, so dun papasok mga humanoid robots. Then, we also have mobile manipulators, so for modular automation naman. So, next is robotics requirement. So pinakauna is we have what we call kinematics and dynamics. So, kinematics and dynamics, dito kasi papasok yung computation ng movement ng isang robot. So, pag kinode mo siya, so let's say ano yung specific final position niya given yung different parameters. So, we also have yung term na degrees of freedom, or degrees of freedom kasi is a measurement of how much yung mobility niya ng isang robot. So, let's say kagaya niyan, isang robotic arm. So, it can have multiple degrees of freedom. If it needs something complex or something, or few naman na DOF, if something simple naman yung need na process. Then, we also need control and dexterity. So, in order to carry out diverse tasks with high precision, so importante yung paano siya makokontrol. So, how accurate yung control, how sensitive ba yung mga control. So, dito pasok yun. Then, of course, since we're talking about medical robotics, kailangan maano rin natin yung sterilization, and minsan papasok din dito yung the type of material na tinatawag is biocompatibility. So, medical robotics are usually exposed to patients, especially may mga sakit. So, it is very important na paano siya linisin, to sterilize it, and avoid the spreading of diseases. The next is, of course, safety then. So, it should be safe both sa patient and at the same time sa operator then. So, of course, especially yung previous na topic on the total lab automation. So, if we're dealing with both human and robot, with interaction between them, so it's important na maging safe. Madidetect, let's say, dadaan yung isang human, so it would stop hindi sila magtatama or yun, hindi ma-harm syempre yung mga operator or yung mga any human within close contact dun sa robot. So, pwedeng pumasok dito the use of sensors. Attachment sensor, then madidetect o may dadaan mo na human. Then, of course, next is the ease of handling and maintenance. So, it must be easy to troubleshoot. So, let's say, kaya ng mga medical technicians, doctors, or other staff dun sa hospital. And you won't be needing hindi na need ng mga engineers or something, or it won't be that difficult na ma-troubleshoot. Let's say, nagkaroon ng error yung device nyo, then it's easy to troubleshoot, malaman ko ano yung problema, and at the same time, paano siya isosolve. Then, again, as much as possible, kaya nung within the hospital staff. Then, next is power requirements. So, of course, some mga medical devices might be high power. So, yung pinaka-electrical infrastructure syempre ng facilities nyo should be enough. And at the same time, part din dito is what would happen if biglang nawalan ng kuryente. So, how would your device react? Or kunyari, lalo na kung robot, so how would it react or how would it act out na biglang namatay? So, will the operation continue ba? Or bigla ba siyang magsa-stop or magpa-power down? So, very important to. So, example nito, what if kung sa surgery, so it's something critical na operation, especially kung may robot. So, kailangan it should be part of planning ng isang medical device. Then, ito rin, so cost, so especially here in the Philippines, so yung cost ng medical device, it should be within the means. Let's say, kunyari, you plan on selling it on a specific country. So, within the means or yung economy, nung health economy nung isang specific na place, yung parang target na market nyo. So, there might be some na kayang i-afford na, pero kagaya nga na mentioned previously, so we have the surgical robots, which is around 100 to 200 million pesos, yung Da Vinci robot. So, hindi gaano karami yung gumagamit. The Philippine National Harmonized R&D Agenda 2017 to 2022 for Health. So, yung meron tayo ng Harmonized National Research and Development Agenda for 2017 to 2022. So, ito kasi yung sinet out ng government natin through the DOST and the Philippine Council for Health Research and Development or the PCHRD. Ito yung mga different research focuses, especially specific for health. So, ito yung, ayun nga, aligned siya dun sa ambition natin 2040. So, yun yung much larger na research goal and goal ng Philippines through research and innovation. So, ambition natin 2040. Then, dun nga, below it, part dun is yung health. So, for health, ayan yung mga different R&D priority areas natin. So, drug discovery, diagnostic, functional food, hospital equipment and biomedical devices, ICT, dengue, nutrition and food safety, disaster risk, reduction and health, climate change, adaptation, and omic technology for health. So, ayun, it was made through the Republic Act 10532 or the Philippine National Health Research System. So, na-develop din dito yung NURA. So, it summarizes the health research and development directions of the country for the next 6 years, so 2017 to 2022. Then, it is disseminated to health research generators, so kagaya ng mga universities. So, kunyari, kung gusto nyo mag-research, especially under ng mga DOST fund or ng PCHRD or ng Philippine Council for Health Research and Development, so, ifa-follow ninyo kung ano yung mga different priority areas or direction ng NURA natin. So, ito yung NURA for 2017 to 2022. So, patapos na yung 2022. So, by next year, maglalabas na uli si PCHRD and DOST and PCHRD ng bagong NURA natin for the next 6 years ulit. So, ito yung mga responsive health system, research to enhance and extend healthy lives, holistic, health resiliency, global competitiveness, research in equity and health. So, ito nga yung nabanggit before, yung harmonized national R&D agenda, so diagnostic, drug discovery, so on and so forth. So, ito yung specifically for biomedical products. So, ito yung mga priority area for R&D. So, hemodialysis, silicone chest tubes, wound care product devices such as dressings, orthopedic surgery, non-invasive ventilator for adults, portable oxygen concentrator, rapid testing device, spinal disorder, hospital air filter, primary care and post-operative care, hospital waste, and personal protective equipment. Then, ito, so specific topics, ventilator, prosthesis, minimally invasive and surgical procedures and devices, and so next is the initiatives of De La Salle University. So through the Institute of Biomedical Engineering and Health Technologies. So to start, I'll play the video to introduce to you IBET.
Some of the problems faced by the medical industry in the Philippines are the economic disparity in healthcare, lack of access to high-tech medical devices, and dependence on imported technologies. With these problems, we realize that there is a need to develop these devices. This is why the De La Salle University Institute of Biomedical Engineering and Health Technologies was proposed to bridge these gaps. Dr. Bugtay was inspired to start this research institute after his visiting professor stint at the University of Pisa as part of the Asia Link program funded by the European Union, developing competencies in biomedical engineering. Opportunities to collaborate with different projects from different universities came in the years to follow after his return. With the experience he accumulated, he was eventually able to establish the Biomedical Devices Innovation and e-Health Research Group by engaging with research in robotic rehabilitation and surgical instruments funded by the PCHRD. IBET aims to also be able to address the following needs: common service facilities, a platform for exchange of information, and the need for more experts in the field of biomedical engineering. IBET plans to address this with a framework that includes capacity building of the biomedical engineering field in the Philippines, collaborations, lab-to-market roadmap, and one-stop shop for biomedical research. There are currently about 6 projects under IBET. The Agape project is a wearable robotic exoskeleton that aids the post-stroke or injured patient's upper limbs to perform a range of motion that eventually helps regain their motor control. The Lapara project is a laparoscopic instrument that will improve the maneuverability of a surgeon in the operating room by integrating joint articulation, robotic arm control, haptic and visual feedback, and an ergonomic workstation. The TUA project is a robotic device for early trunk and lower limb rehabilitation that helps restore the patient's lower limb strength and range of motion. The DOE project is an impervious wireless intravaginal monitoring sensor device that aims to determine the peak estrus by monitoring the overall estrus cycle of a goat. The Capacita project aims to be able to teach the skills and knowledge needed in the commercialization of biomedical engineering and health technologies to researchers, inventors, technology transfer officers, and related personnel. The Kandili project is a competitive intellectual property management system to be able to commercialize biomedical devices, hospital equipment, and health technologies through the IBET programs effectively and efficiently. Project Agapay, Lapara, Tayo, DOE, Capacita, and Kandili are the current projects being handled by IBET. As we continue to innovate the industry through our current projects, we will also be talking about our upcoming projects. The current status of DLSU IBET is that of a niche center in the region for research and development in medical robotics. From the categories of R&D, the establishment of a neurorobotics technology center in the Philippines will be the first official program of the newly created DLSU IBET NICER program on medical robotics, which aims to focus on the last thrust, which is neurorobotics. The Neurotech program will be multi- and interdisciplinary in nature and will establish 3 component projects: the CELIA project, Ibalik project, and Sigla project. The program will be headed by Dr. Roy Francis Navea, an associate professor from the ECE department. First project commenced under the Neurotech program is the Celia project, which is headed by Dr. Nilo Bugtay. The first project is a wheelchair that operates on the user's brainwaves, meant for patients with physical disabilities such as autoimmune disease, motor neuron disease, spinal cord injuries, and more. Another IBET-approved project under the Neurotech program is the Ibalik project, a cognitive and motor function rehabilitation using neurofeedback training system for stroke patients. With Dr. Mirna Estrada as the project leader, the group aims to incorporate the concept of Ibalik, which means to restore. The third project under the Neurotech program is the Sigla project, headed by Dr. Roy Francis Navea. It is a neurofeedback therapy solution designed for people diagnosed with depression, and the idea came from the concept Ibalik ang sigla, something desired for people with depression. IBET has several plans for its future, increasing the R&D collaborations for the biomedical devices innovation and health researches, IP protection for all research projects and commercializing IBET's developed devices, increasing the quality of publications and referred journals, establishing go-to centers for biomedical devices and hospital equipment, fundraising to construct a building to house the different research centers, transforming IBET into a university institute, and lastly, to spearhead the creation of the Philippine bioregions through the NICER program. What are Dr. Bugtay's thoughts, experiences, and realizations through his journey? Overall, he believes it was a deeply meaningful learning experience. He learned that making connections with other international researchers helped bear fruit to new and more innovative ideas. He realized that the original thought may not have been wrong, but there could be other ways to achieve your goal. Cost isn't everything. The important thing is what you bring to the table. What makes your product better than what's already being sold?
So, yun yung short overview of IBET. So, before IBET kasi, it was the Biomedical Devices Innovation and eHealth Research Group or BDI. So, from there, naging IBET na siya. So, unang project namin is sa Agapay project, yung phase 1. So, Agapay is the robotic exoskeleton for the upper limb, stroke and injury rehabilitation. So, second project namin was the Lapara project naman. On August 2018 siya nag-start yung phase 1 niya. So, Lapara naman was developed from back in 2011 pa, nung JALT. Then, naging Lapara na siya noong 2018. So, from a motorized handheld device, naging robotic surgical system na siya. So, during those time nung BDI pa lang, so, ito yung findings and issues while we were conducting our research. So, kailangan ng common service facilities and support for the health technology development. Then, important ang constant communication between the engineers and the medical counterparts. And, of course, hindi marami ang mga biomedical engineers or conducting biomedical device research. So, kailangan ng capacity building program para lumaki at magkaroon ng capacity, ng critical mass of experts in the field. So with that, nag-propose ng IBET to the DOST-PC HRD and eventually na-approve siya noong September 18, 2018. So kasama nun is may dalawang component project which is the Tayo and the Padayon project. So yan. So in IBET, so vision namin is our mission is to pave the way in accelerating the development of biomedical devices and health technologies by providing state-of-the-art facilities and services to research universities and institutions, enabling them to transform their ideas into market-ready products. So IBET, even though it's DLSU, IBET are under sa DLSU siya, it's open for everyone. It's especially anyone who is conducting biomedical research. So, hindi lang para sa Lasal to, kundi para sa bayan or para sa bansa. So, anyone in the Philippines who wants to conduct biomedical research or biomedical device research and need of help, especially through mga specialized equipments and mga training. So, IBET can help. So, IBET is the big brother of biomedical research here in the Philippines. So, IBET is here to help in sa mga other universities here in the country. So ayan, a one-stop shop and a lab to market roadmap and go-to center. So Eventually, magkakaroon ng mga thematic research center under IBET. So we have the neurorobotics, which is recently lang na-approve siya or na-establish back in June 2022 lang. Then eventually magkakaroon ng specific for robotic rehab, then robotic surgical devices, and the commercialization hub, and eventually a calibration and safety testing center for medical devices. So it is IBET also is a venue where applicants for the foreign masters and PhD scholarship in biomedical engineering will be supported and guided to align his or research topics identified under the NURA. So if may interested and gusto mag-aral, so and the support from the OST is all expense paid. So cost of living plus the tuition. So any country, any university. So yun yung sa DOST SEI. And IBET is here to guide and help, and eventually can also recommend applicants to the DOST SEI scholarship. So here's the IBET logical framework. So we have the NURA. We also conduct needs identification of the community, industry, and academe, and the biomedical devices locally. So here is our guide or inputs to our logical framework, which is through collaboration, capacity building, lab to market roadmap, and a one-stop shop for biomedical research. We develop locally developed biomedical devices, a nationally recognized go-to center for scientists and translating health researches from the lab to the bedside, and also capacity building activities for the biomed field and develop the local expertise. So we have three main activities. So we have R&D, capacity building, and support systems. So in 2019, naging official na naging research center under De La Salle University or under the Vice President for Vice Chancellor. So previously it was Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation. So under the Vice Chancellor for Research Innovation, yung Research Center of IBET. So ayan, naging officially na-implement siya on September 1, 2019. So doon nag-start officially na IBET na. So ito yung organizational structure. Then we also have the advisory council. So here are our different research projects. So first is we have the Agapay, one of our flagships. So and first projects under IBET. So again, it's a wearable robotic exoskeleton for stroke patient rehabilitation. So currently naka-phase 3 na, nagfi-phase 3 na siya, conducting its phase 1 of clinical trials. So yun. Next is the Lapara project. So ito naman yung robotic surgical system. So currently it's on its phase 2. So conducting its safety testing and preclinical studies on a pig cadaver. Next naman is Tayo project. So if we have Agapay project for the upper limb, we also have the Tayo project for the lower limb rehabilitation naman for stroke and injury rehabilitation na lower limb naman. So currently nasa phase 2 na siya and conducting its clinical trials on healthy patients. Then we also have the DOE project. So DOE project naman is for ano naman siya, for goats. So it's a wearable goat peak estrus sensor. So it aims to detect the peak estrus of goat using a wearable wireless monitoring sensor device. So in summary, so we have this, so phase 2. So phase 2 of Agapay, Lapara, Tayo, Padayon, then DOE project. Then ongoing, the stage 2 of the Lapara, Tayo, and the Agapay project. Then we also have the IBET commercialization hub, which has first is the capacita, which is aimed to enable and equip researchers. So it's a capacity building project in order to provide the necessary training for biomedical devices commercialization experts. So in order to grow those expertise. So particularly on the development of training workshop, resource materials, needs assessment, exhibit fairs, and industry immersion. Then we also have the Kandili naman, so which is a competitive intellectual property management system for the commercialization of biomedical devices. So of course, mga research sa IBET, it just cannot be just purely maging research. So eventually, kailangan siya maging market-ready products or ma-commercialize siya. That's why meron tayong IBET Commercialization Hub. So, ito yung mga newly approved namin na program. So, the Neurotech program, which has the SELA, IBALIC, and SIGLA. Then, of course, upcoming this 2023 as well. Approved last 2021. Then, for implementation next year. So, the para Stage 3. Then, we also have the Tayo Stage 3 and the Ensayo. So, one of our new projects. Then, we also have an upcoming, actually starting already recently, just this October. So, the Tulay project. So, it's in partnership with University of Plymouth. So, it's funded by the UKRI. So, overall, IBET has received over 350 million pesos in research funding from DOST and UKRI. And with that large amount, it is very important for us to, again, to bring our research not just for research or publication purposes, but also to make sure to bring it to the market or to commercialize it in order for the Filipinos to benefit from them. So, yeah. So, again, one of our newly established program, which is the Neurotech program. So, it's for the Neurorobotics Center. So, it has the component projects. So, first, we have the SELA. So, to develop a brain-computer interface integrated to a wheelchair aimed at helping motor-impaired patients, such as ALS patients. We have the IBALIC project to develop a cognitive and motor function rehab training system for stroke patients. So it's a combination of EEG plus VR for a neurofeedback rehabilitation system for stroke patients. Then we also have the SIGLA, which
Thank you very much, Dr. Bugtay, for giving us a new point of view through robotics. We really are now in an era where robots have slowly become part of our daily life, most especially in the healthcare industry, to improve the quality of care that we provide to our patients. And now, to answer our audience question, I will now turn over the floor to Mr. Oscar John Q. Garcia for the open forum.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Michaela, and of course to our distinguished speakers. Truly, it was an illuminating and very informative discussion. So at this point in time, the floor is now set for the open forum. So questions coming from the participants will be addressed to our speakers. And with that, may we request our distinguished guests to turn on their camera? So it's very unfortunate to not have Dr. Malaya in this open forum due to an emergency situation. However, your questions will still be entertained. Just post your questions in the chat box and the tech team will coordinate with Dr. Santos and will send you an answer. So for the open forum, the first question would be for Dr. Andal. Okay, so the question is, when it comes to cancer, biopsy is one of the routinely done procedure in the histopathology section. Now, with the introduction and advancement of tumor markers in the molecular biology, do you think it will have a negative impact on the histopathology section? Dr. Andal?
Hi, thank you for that question. So I don't think it will negatively impact the practice of histopathology and histotechnicians. Uh, I think be it would actually empower the histopathology lab to have improvements in their practice. There will always be a place for histotechnicians and histopathologists first to give a diagnosis of cancer by morphology first, and then submit the sample for molecular testing and molecular profiling. I think there will always be a place for that. The improvements will and the trends in the laboratory, like digital pathology, computational pathology, robotics, will complement the practice of histotechnologists and clinical laboratory scientists, but it will never replace um, uh, the manpower in the lab.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Anda. Another follow-up question, Dr. Andal, still with your topic, which is the advancement in the laboratory. Okay, so with the limited number of medical technologists that are practicing in the molecular field, particularly the ones performing molecular techniques, as well as with new next generation sequencing and bioinformatics, do you think this could be a rising opportunities to the other allied health professionals, just like the biology graduates and microbiologists? And could this be or could this pose a challenge in us registered medical technologists?
Yeah, so for clinical testing, because of the local laws and regulations, there will always be a place for medical technologists for clinical testing. In the realm of the research laboratories, yes, there's a growing need for more and more molecular biologists and laboratory professionals who have experience and expertise in molecular testing. But the research realm is different from what we do in the clinical setting in the clinical laboratory, where we handle patient samples and give out official test results. So those require registered medical technologists. Um, I think the greater challenge for us is to how to retain is how to retain uh, trained and skilled local expertise before they fly out abroad for better opportunities.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Anda. Um, at this point, the questions will be addressed to Dr. Bugtay. So Dr. Bugtay, so with the introduction of robotics in diagnostic medicine, this has led to the development of wearable gadgets that continuously monitor the health status of a patient. Now, the concern is how much do we need to trust, or the question is how much do we need to trust these gadgets for health monitoring?
Actually, it really depends on what kind of gadget or wearable that you are going to purchase or to have in your for yourself, diba? So for us who are doing research in this area of wearables, pero malalaki lang sa amin, it really depends on what you really want to measure in your let's say vital sign, because there are so many, it's flooding the market actually. So if you ask me paano natin anuhin yan, well, it depends on you. I will throw back to the question, bakit ka gusto magkaroon ng ganon, di ba? So the money that you pay for that particular device is really something that you want that device to answer your queries, your questions, your monitoring yourself. So if you ask me how we can, it really depends. It really depends. because it's all available. The market is flooded from what we call, let's say, fake. You have more or less class A. You have as well the authentic, which is very expensive. So it really depends on where you want to be, or what level of accuracy that you want to get in using all of those wearables.
Thank you, Dr. Purtay. Another question for you, Doc, is still with robotics. So with the recent advancement, so shift of priorities when it comes to skill development should be made. So do you think we should lessen honing the manual techniques, but instead focus on the enhancement with the operation of the automated machines and even manipulation of robots?
I don't think that you have to do away all the manual, because even robotics need technician as well. So what I mean is that when you do shifting to high skills or advanced technology like robotics, you are also bringing with you the traditional, the basic knowledge. Because without the basic knowledge, then you have a lot to do before applying or using the robotics. So it means what we can do in our educational system, or even in our what do you call this, textbook, like the test courses or the associated courses, maybe it should be introduction, because when you look, or when you go to Japan or in European countries, the basic education like elementary, they already started their robotics actually. Okay, so meaning even learning the conventional type and the robotics that advanced are simultaneously being introduced to the basic education, the primary, secondary schooling. So it is only us. I think it's only, I don't know how many schools are introducing it, but I'm very sure that PSI, Philippine Science, really gone into it, because they have really research, very strong research that they apply to robotics. And of course, some very high prominent private schools have been there to introduce at a very young age or primary education robotics as well. So I think you cannot do away all the basics, the conventional, but you have to equip them that with that knowledge, there is the improvement, the progress of the high technology. Because without the basic technology, there will be no advanced technology. So if you have a well-versed basic knowledge, it will be easier for you to shift, because robotics actually is just a tool. It's just a tool where you are going to apply it. So that's why we're talking about in this forum, applied to health, applied to healthcare. But you have also robot in hazardous application, diba? Or in agriculture. So there's so many applications, because it is only a tool. It's only a tool. So it really depends on what you want to do in your knowledge actually. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bugtay. No. So my take on all of these questions that have been asked and the answers coming from our distinguished speakers is that change is already there, and we cannot go away from it, or we cannot run away from it, but instead we must accept the change that is happening, that is currently happening in our industry or in our field. And if we learn to accept those changes, then we can learn to adapt from it. And we know that in this world, adaptation is a must. So for us to be able to evolve further, we adapt in those changes for us to enhance our skills, which are needed as the things shift to a more advanced and highly technological world in the medical industry. So thank you so much to our dear speakers for answering our questions. Still, if you have questions, if the audiences have questions, you may still post on our chat box, and we'll coordinate with our speakers and we'll answer one of your questions through email. So I have learned so much today. I know it's not just me, and it is such a fruitful afternoon for everyone. So at this point, I am giving the floor back once again to Ms. Alabado for presentation of the certificates of appreciation to our speakers.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Now on the presentation of certificates, the Trinity University of Asia College of Medical Technology awards this certificate of appreciation to Dr. Malaya P. Santos, Dr. Jose Jasper Andal, and Dr. Nilo Bugtay for their invaluable contributions as guest speakers on the talk Trends in Medical Laboratory Science in the Fourth Industrial Revolution, held on November 11, 2022 from 1 to 4 p.m., given by Trinity University of Asia College of Medical Technology with program accreditation number OMT 2021-032. Signed by Jomar Adams Ganding, Academic Head, Dr. Mark D. Francisco, Dean, and Dr. Howell T. Ho, Vice President for Academic Affairs. Thank you very much to our dear speakers. May I now request our speakers and participants to open their cameras for a photo opportunity. Tech team, please take over.
Okay, good afternoon to everyone. We would just like to request everybody to please turn on your camera as we do the photo opportunity with our speakers. So can I request our tech team to please stop the presentation for a while as we do our photo op. Ayan. So good afternoon to everyone. Okay. So I think the audience cannot open their camera. So we would just like to invite the panelists to open their camera for a while. So we'll just be counting. Smile na lang po tayo sa camera. Okay? So 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, one more time po. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much. And back to you, Ms. Michaela.
Thank you. And now, as we are about to end today's event, let us call on Mr. Jomar Adams Ganding to deliver the closing remarks.
Okay, once again, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you, Ms. Alabado, for that introduction. Once again, we would just like to greet a pleasant afternoon, all of our participants, all our registered medical technologists who made time to join us as part of our MedTech Week celebration in Trinity University of Asia, to all our students, guests, staff, and of course, administrators, most importantly, our resource speakers, Dr. Malaya Santos, Dr. Jose Jasper Andal, and of course, Dr. Nilo Bugtay. Thank you so much for your time joining us this afternoon. Truly, we did learn a lot of things. And as a medical technologist, whether you're a student or a practicing medical technologist, truly, that change is irresistible. Just like what Dr. Malaya mentioned, we can no longer resist the change that is happening not only in our educational system, but also in the clinical setting, and even the dawn of the use of robotics and artificial intelligence in the clinical laboratory. Now, this COVID-19 pandemic has catalyzed us transitioning to the fourth industrial revolution. And truly, being updated and knowing the latest trends in the medical laboratory science will all equip us not only to become better academician, better registered medical technologist, but also better citizen of our country, the Philippines. Now, with that, again, we would like to thank all of you, our tech team who made this event possible, to the FISMITS officers who made this event possible, to the organizers led by Dr. Michael O. Baclig, Sir Nathaniel Veron Casamina, Ms. Micaela Alabado, Mr. Oscar John Garcia, Mr. Jack Busa, and the rest of the team. Thank you so much. Now, with that, we will not be holding you too long. Please stand by for the evaluation link, which will be posted by our technical team. Once again, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Have a great day and happy Friday. Thank you so much and goodbye.
Thank you, Sir Gandhi. And that ends our webinar today. Thank you to our speakers and thank you for everyone for attending today's Trinity Talk, Trends in Medical Laboratory Science in Fourth Industrial Revolution. Please do not forget to accomplish the evaluation form. You may scan the flash QR or get the link from the chat box. The evaluation link will be available only until 5:30 p.m. Please be reminded that CBD units will only be given to those with complete attendance or time in and evaluation, which includes some post-event questions and time out. Please only include the name as stated in your PRC license to avoid discrepancies in the PRC system. Use your most active email address for the electronic certificate. And lastly, CPD certificates will be made available after 15 days only if all reminders have been followed. On behalf of the Trinity University of Asia's College of Medical Technology and our presenters, thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your weekend.
Recording stopped.